Sound of Money with Santosh Sirur.
So, Neelkanth, welcome to the 100th series of my podcast, The Sound of Money.
Thank you, Santosh, and congratulations on such a successful journey.
Yeah, I recall when we spoke last, you did say, and at that time it was Trump, the elections were still there, yet to happen, and you did indicate that Trump can decide, either way or this way or that way. But still, taking back on talking about India in terms of the India's growth momentum, you've been very optimistic always in terms of the India growth prospects. Neelkanth, what are the key kind of drivers that are driving these India's growth momentum in these and you foresee in the coming years?
So the first and most important is that we have a great demographic push. So the number of workers in the economy is growing. That provides very secular momentum. So it doesn't just provide hands to work, it also provides very natural demand. So as households form, as households expand, they need bigger houses. The support of this additional workers and additional families needs additional infrastructure. That itself is, I think, a significant demand generator. Most economies in the world, whether it was the US, say 100 years back, China in the last 40, 50 years, have relied significantly on the creation of residential real estate, urban, commercial real estate and infrastructure. Secondly, we also have this tendency, like maybe most of us as humans, that we really change only when there is pressure. And some of this disruption that we are seeing globally has accelerated the process of reforms. As the Honorable Prime Minister said in one of the meetings, that the acceptability of dramatic change, but positive change among the people is the best he has seen in a long, long time. So, so as we face adversity, our desire to change, to undertake what is necessary, is also the best. And lastly, I think the cost of capital coming down. So at a non-stress time, of course, forget about the recent surge, which I think will reverse. Yeah. But the government's remarkable fiscal discipline has meant that the cost of capital and the availability of capital, both debt and equity capital, is the best we have seen, I would say, ever. And a combination of all of that, very steady structural demand, transformational reforms, as well as a low cost of capital, I think this is a golden age of entrepreneurship in India.
Absolutely. But, given the background of the current global tensions and, especially just unexpected, but on a very different scale now that we foresee, how can India actually navigate these challenges and probably maintain its trajectory? Any specific sectors you see that will be most affected in the coming months to years?
Look, the disruptions that we are now seeing, which seem to be remarkably consistent, that every 2-3 years there is almost a plan destroying event. What this means is that the world will move towards, or the needle in the balance between efficiency and resilience will start moving more towards resilience. So India needs to become more resilient. What that means is that there will need to be much better focus on domestic energy sources. We need to use our energy much better. There needs to be a lot of self-dependency on critical technologies. I don't think it is wise to achieve complete Atmanirbharta on everything, but having a few things which we can use as leverage as well is extremely important. And which means that I think on things like technology, on defense, on energy, there will be, I would say, transformational changes that happen in our ecosystem. At the same time, as the world seeks to be much more resilient than it used to be, I think the opportunity of using India as a neutral power in this great war between the US and China is also going to start emerging as a meaningful opportunity. So that's how I think India shapes up. I do think that they should catalyze us, not just at the central level, but at the state level and the municipal level, and as companies as well, to take on entrepreneurial and risk-taking and exciting adventures in terms of new projects.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted your views on India's structural reforms, right, in the long run. Any key structural reforms that India needs to implement, and how do you see the government policy initiative taking shape? Whilst we are under the war background and the zone kind of say, but where do you see the long-term India story heading?
So many of these reforms are already underway. So there are two big committees, one under Dr. Somanathan, who's the current cabinet secretary, and one under his predecessor, Rajiv Gauba. So both of these committees are at a very rapid cadence, suggesting and then implementing very radical reforms. So, for example, 23 states, 23 reforms were pushed to states. If you do a matrix of 23 into 36 last year, out of the 828 boxes, 86% were ticked. These included some very substantive, but it doesn't make the headlines, but things like women being allowed to work night shifts, women being allowed to work in what used to be called hazardous roles. Given that they are now working in the army, it's surprising that law was preventing them from working in certain types of manufacturing roles. We have had, the restriction that 15% of the land in a factory must be used for greening removed, because frankly, if India as a whole wants more forests, that's the most expensive piece of land on which to build a forest. So now the factories have 20% more land to expand. So some of these reforms have been happening. At the central level, Mr. Gauba's committee has been going really deep into the role of the state and what does the constitution really authorize the state to implement as law, as regulation. What they're finding, I think, is that there's been significant overreach, and that needs to be reversed, and that is starting to happen. So I would say, in terms of prioritization, I think energy price reform is one of the most politically vexed, but much more important than anything else. If we price energy well, I think our use of energy, we'll be among the only countries in the world which has gone from low middle income to rich without owning its own dense sources of energy. So I think we need to be very prudent with it, and that would be the most recommended reform, I would suggest.
Absolutely. And now with the current situation, I think energy security is going to be of the most prime importance in discussion.
Yes.
Absolutely. One last question in India, especially when it comes to emerging opportunities, be it the $5 trillion economy, or as you rightly mentioned, the demographic dividend. How can we leverage further, Neelkanth, if India takes its shape ahead?
So I think the opportunities that are emerging in the hardware electronics space are significant. So the dramatic increase in the number of cell phones we assemble has been now well celebrated. But what perhaps is not as well understood is that Apple and other manufacturers now want to upstream some of the value chains as well. So there are significant opportunities emerging there. On the semiconductor ecosystem, which I'm very intimately involved with, the opportunities that are emerging now in terms of not just the fabs, but the chemicals, the gases, the ingots that go into compound semiconductors to chip design, and how critical it is in Pax Silica, which is an American-led consortium for semiconductors, that Indian chip design companies flourish as a counterweight to Chinese chip design companies. And lastly, I think the defense and the Atmanirbharta and the new ways of warfare that are emerging, not just in Russia, Ukraine, but now increasingly in the Iran war as well, or what we ourselves experienced in Operation Sindoor, the use of robots, the use of storage batteries. There is so much more that needs to be done. And the deployment of artificial intelligence. While many people lament the fact that there is very limited Indian presence in the generation of intelligence, meaning in GPUs and algorithms and data centers and large data centers. I think in the deployment of that intelligence, we can completely transform some of our processes and I would say leapfrog growth, just like we did using mobile phones and Aadhaar to give everyone a bank account, and then a new layer of the digital public infrastructure was built. I think new opportunities are likely to emerge in a whole range of sectors because of AI as well.
Absolutely. Many, many thanks, Neelkanth, for being on the 100 series podcast of My Sound of Money.
Thank you, Santosh, and congratulations again.
The Sound of Money with Santosh Sirur.